A former priest gets recruited to retrieve an artifact from a church that shouldn't exist. On a battlefield, a wounded man prays as he walks past the dead. He sees a wounded soldier holding a relic, so he tries to take it. The soldier suddenly grabs him, so he backs away and sees bodies crucified upside down. In Egypt, archaeologist Lancaster Marin meets an antique dealer named Semelier. The man tells him about a church in Africa that was supposedly built in 5 AD. Lancaster doesn't believe him as the Byzantine Empire didn't spread Christianity there at that time. Semelier reveals that the British have financed the church's excavation to discover a relic, but he wants Lancaster to find it before them. Lancaster refuses, so Semelier asks what happened to him, knowing that Lancaster was a priest before the war. When he doesn't respond, Semelier shows him an impression of the relic. Lancaster assesses that it's Sumerian and asks why he thinks it's in Africa. Semelier simply tells him that a British major leads an excavation for it, and he already agreed to let Lancaster join. Lancaster soon arrives at the British Army headquarters, where the soldiers remind him about the war. He then meets Major Granville, who tells him that the excavation is in Derati. Granville then introduces Father Francis, who is assigned to ensure that the church won't be desecrated. Francis addresses Lancaster as a priest, so Lancaster corrects him since he's no longer one. On their way, Lancaster and Francis ride a jeep with Chuma. Chuma shares that he's been there since the start of the excavation as an interpreter. Lancaster sees a graveyard, so Chuma explains that it's because of the plague that happened years ago. They soon arrive in Derati, where Lancaster meets Jeffries, the dig supervisor, and Sarah Novak, the area's missionary doctor. Lancaster asks about the site's status, so Jeffries reveals that the church is in pristine condition, but no one would enter. When asked why, Jeffries just leaves. Curious, Lancaster asks about Jeffries' scars, so Sarah speculates that it's an infection. He then asks why the men won't enter the church, and Sarah explains that it's because of the evil spirits, though she doesn't believe in this since she's a doctor. Francis then introduces Emekwi, who's donating his hotel room for the mission school, and his sons, James and Joseph. They soon arrive at the site, where they see the church's uncovered dome. Lancaster brushes off the dirt on the wall and finds that it's still pristine. He concludes that the church was buried right after it was built. He then notices hyenas roaming around, so Chuma notes that they've been around since they began digging. Suddenly, a worker experiences a seizure. Lancaster then sees Joseph exploring, so he warns the boy that it's dangerous to collect rocks there. To help him, he hands Joseph a trowel. Afterward, Lancaster returns to the site, and Sarah tells him that the man's seizure has stopped. She wants to keep him at the hospital, but the Turkana doesn't trust her anymore. Curious, Sarah asks him what he wants to uncover. Lancaster shares that he wants to know why a church was built years before Christianity arrived. Just then, Jeffries arrives and gives Sarah a necklace for luck. Lancaster then asks when they can uncover the church's door, but Jeffries thinks it'll take days, so he suggests that they enter through the roof. Soon, Lancaster, Chuma, and Francis climb down the roof. Inside, they find a patchwork of Lucifer and the spears of the statues pointing downward. They also see an upside-down figure of Jesus Christ on a cross. Francis asks for an inventory of the items found in the church, so Chuma suggests that lead archaeologist Monsieur Besson would know. However, he's gone mad. Chuma takes Lancaster to Besson's tent, where the archaeologist sees a drawing of the artifact. As he reaches for it, he accidentally cuts his palm on a glass shard. In her room, Sarah does tarot reading, where she gets the Death, the Tower, and the Devil cards. She shuffles the deck and gets the same reading. Lancaster visits her to ask about Besson's treatment. Sarah, however, notices the cut on his palm, so she suggests cleaning it. While cleaning his wound, Sarah reveals that Besson had no symptoms before his mental breakdown. Lancaster assumes this is why the Turkana fear the church's curse. Lancaster then notices Sarah's tattoo, so she shares how her family hid from the tyrants, but someone turned them in, so they were sent to a prison camp. Sarah adds that her husband never touched her again after she revealed her past to him. Curious, Sarah wonders if he misses being a priest, to which Lancaster says no. Lancaster plans to see Besson the next day, so Sarah recommends that he speak with Father Giannetti, who runs the sanitarium. Meanwhile, Francis prays when his cross suddenly turns upside down. This scares Francis, so he writes it up and leaves, only for the cross to turn again afterward. That night, Lancaster scans Besson's drawings, focusing on the artifact. This makes him recall a soldier telling him that God is not here today, before shooting a girl. At the same time, James drinks from the well when he sees Joseph, so he tells him to go back to bed. However, Joseph refuses and walks to get his trowel, but James grabs it. Suddenly, hyenas come out, and James finds himself cornered. Joseph simply watches as his brother gets attacked. Emekwi rushes with his rifle but freezes, so Lancaster takes the gun and shoots the hyenas, making them flee while Joseph collapses. At the clinic, Sarah checks Joseph's condition. Francis points out that the hyenas ignored Joseph, acting as if he wasn't there. In St. John's Sanitarium the next day, Lancaster meets with Besson. Lancaster asks where he saw the relic from his drawing, but the man just laughs. The door suddenly closes, and blood drips on the floor. Besson then faces Lancaster, showing that he has carved his chest. Suddenly, he declares that God is not here today, before stabbing himself in the neck. Lancaster watches in horror as the nurses attend to him, and Father Giannetti steps in. Giannetti speculates that Besson was touched by the devil, recalling how in 1647, a convent in France was plagued by possession. He believes that the same evil is in Derati, so he hands Lancaster the book for exorcism. Lancaster refuses as he's no longer a priest, but Giannetti tells him that he'll always be a priest and only his faith can save him. That night, Sarah reads when the wind blows off her papers. She closes her window but notices something moving behind her. Holding a weapon, she walks to Joseph's room and sees him sitting on the floor, caressing something underneath a cloth. She removes the cloth and finds James's decapitated head. Sarah gasps awake as she wakes up from the nightmare. To her surprise, she finds Jeffries beside her. He berates her for throwing away the necklace he gave her, but she defends that she lost it. Still, Jeffries blurts out that if she could only cure his face, he may look good to her. Joseph then enters the room and says he's coming for you. Worried, Sarah approaches Joseph and comforts him. Later, Lancaster checks on Joseph and sees a lesion on his chest. Sarah assures him that it's asymptomatic, but she can't figure out the source. She asks him about Besson, so he reveals that he's dead. Sarah cries as she feels useless, so Lancaster hugs her in comfort and they kiss. Suddenly, blood flows into Joseph's IV bag, and the bed moves. When Lancaster checks on the boy, he begins convulsing, so Sarah checks his vital signs until he stops. One night, Lancaster enters the church and compares the surroundings to one of Besson's drawings. With this, he discovers a crypt beneath the church, so he lights a lighter on its side. When the wind from the tomb blows the fire, he discovers where the opening is. At the same time, the wife of the Turkana tribe chief gives birth to a stillborn covered in maggots. Meanwhile, Lancaster uncovers the tomb and discovers an ancient pagan temple with a statue of a devil named Pazuzu. He touches it but finds flies surrounding him. Outside, Jeffrey breaks into the bar and tries to reach for a beer. However, he sees his infested face in the mirror. The door suddenly slams shut and he screams. In her room, Sarah takes a shower when the power goes out. She checks the fuse but notices someone running. Thinking it's Joseph, she checks on him and sees him asleep. Suddenly, the power comes back on. Only then does Sarah see blood on the floor that's coming from her. Later, Sarah starts to be convinced that Derati is cursed. Lancaster remains skeptical since it's easier to believe in evil as an entity, even though it's just the human condition. He shares that he found a pagan temple underneath the church that was used for human sacrifices. He believes that the church was built on it to purify the site. As he sleeps later, Lancaster dreams of the atrocities during the war. He then wakes up just as Francis barges into his room. They go to the bar where they find the bloody mess, which they believe is Jeffrey's remains. Francis also mentions that the wife of Chief Sabituna gave birth to a stillborn, and the Turkana blames them for it. Francis believes they're planning an uprising, so he contacted Granville to send help, but Lancaster thinks soldiers are not the solution. Before leaving, Lancaster finds Sarah's necklace on the floor. Granville and the troops soon arrive in Derati. They believe that the Turkana are responsible for Jeffrey's death, so they plot to assume control until the excavation is secure. Lancaster mentions that the Turkana doesn't want to be coerced, but Granville stresses that he isn't concerned with them. Meanwhile, the Turkana gather around to witness the stillborn's cremation. Lancaster heads there to offer his condolences and asks about the plague 50 years ago. However, the tribe leader clarifies that it wasn't a plague but an evil from the church. He warns that the evil is getting stronger, so they must abandon their work, otherwise they will stop them. The people proceed to cremate the child on the pyre. Lancaster realizes that the villagers cremate the dead, so he wonders about the graveyard. That night, Lancaster starts digging the graveyard. At the same time, the tribesmen prepare Joseph for exorcism while Emekwi watches. When Sarah enters, they hold her captive. Before they stab the child, everything shakes, and the power goes out. A strong wind blows and the tribesmen get inexplicably wounded. Francis rushes inside, but he gets knocked down as the men escape. Meanwhile, hyenas surround the graveyard, yet Lancaster continues digging. He then recalls how the soldier who killed the girl forced him to choose who he'll shoot next, otherwise he'll kill the rest of the people. Lancaster dared the soldier to shoot him instead, but the man grabbed the boy from the crowd. To spare him, Lancaster chose an old man, so the soldier shot him instead. He continued choosing the men in the group, hoping to spare the children. By sunrise, Lancaster finally uncovers the coffin, only to find it empty. He rushes to the clinic and interrogates Francis about the graveyard. With no choice, Francis confirms that the church buried the empty coffins because the place is damned. Lancaster refuses to believe this, but the priest forces him to listen to the truth since he asked for it. Francis claims that 2 priests led a massacre 1,500 years ago to find the origin of evil. However, evil consumed them, and only 1 priest survived. When the priest returned to the emperor, he ordered the church built over the site to seal the evil and to strike any mention of it from history. However, in 1893, a Vatican researcher found a letter in the archives. 4 priests were sent to examine the site and enlisted the help of several people, but they disappeared. The Vatican ordered a cover-up, so they dug the false graveyard and spread stories about the plague to scare people away. When the British stumbled on it, Francis was sent to see if the legend was real. He explains that the legend claims that after the war in heaven, this is where Lucifer fell. Francis believes that the devil is in Joseph since the Turkana attempted to exorcise him, nearly killing the boy. He asks Lancaster's help, but he refuses to believe in such stories. Later, Chuma and Lancaster drive to the site and find Granville marching to the church's entrance that's been uncovered. As they enter, they find Geoffrey's body hanging in the center. Still convinced that the Turkana did this, Granville seeks vengeance. He marches into the tribe and shoots their leader, erupting chaos. Lancaster yells in anguish until Chuma warns him that the Turkana believes the evil is inside Joseph. He then begs Lancaster to save him. Soon, the troops prepare for battle, yet Granville examines a butterfly in his tent, telling his men to leave him be. The ground shakes, making him uneasy. Granville then notices blood on his hands and a dead crow on his desk instead of a butterfly. He then sees his butterfly collection moving, so he takes his gun and points it at his head. Suddenly, the butterflies stop, but one climbs out of Granville's mouth. Having gone mad, Granville shoots himself. Lancaster soon arrives at the clinic and tells Francis that they must take Joseph away. However, a sandstorm prevents them from leaving, so Francis suggests hiding him in the church where the Turkan won't enter. Lancaster then hands him the book for exorcism while he stays behind to find Sarah. The sandstorm envelops the area, limiting the visibility while the tribe chants. Still, Francis arrives at the church and lays Joseph to perform an exorcism. Meanwhile, Lancaster heads into Sarah's bedroom, where he sees an occult symbol drawn on the wall in blood. He also sees the relic, so he grabs it. He then notices a wedding photo, discovering that Besson was Sarah's husband. With this, he figures out that she went into the church with Besson. Therefore, she's the one possessed, not Joseph. At the church, a possessed Sarah attacks Francis. Meanwhile, the troops open fire, shooting the tribesmen heading their way. Outside the clinic, Chuma gets stabbed by a tribesman, killing him. As the battle between soldiers and tribesmen ensues, Lancaster goes to the church but finds Francis and Joseph gone. Desperate, Lancaster prays to the Lord, begging for forgiveness while marking his forehead with holy water. He then sees Joseph on the tomb while Sarah stands at the crucifix, possessed by Pazuzu. Lancaster demands Pazuzu to leave Joseph alone, but the demon warns the boy not to move. Lancaster offers himself, declaring that he's a fallen priest. This grabs Pazuzu's attention, so she approaches as Lancaster prays the litany. Pazuzu taunts him for wanting Sarah, so Lancaster intensifies his prayers. Pazuzu then mentions that he will not believe in him as he has lost faith. Lancaster then locks his head with hers, burning the demon with the holy water on his forehead. He prays until Pazuzu throws him back. Suddenly, Pazuzu disappears, so Lancaster approaches Joseph, but he is pulled into the crypt. Following him, Lancaster goes inside and finds a blood trail. He prays as he walks until Francis's body drops from above. Despite this, Lancaster takes Francis's stole and wears it. He then sees Joseph running, so he follows him. He crawls into the narrow cave and prays until Pazuzu appears and scratches him. Lancaster sprays holy water on her in retaliation, but Pazuzu pulls him out. Pinning him to the ground, Pazuzu asks where his lord is. She straddles him, so Lancaster desperately tries to exorcise the demon. Pazuzu then reminds him that he's a killer for being part of the war atrocities. Lancaster wraps up his stole in her mouth, throwing Pazuzu away. Pazuzu then chokes Joseph, so Lancaster prays as he walks toward her. He gets hold of her and commands the demon to depart. Pazuzu struggles until Lancaster lets her go. Sarah wakes up back to normal, yet Joseph walks away, which Lancaster notices. When he turns, Sarah transforms into the girl he couldn't save years ago before becoming Pazuzu again. Pazuzu pushes Lancaster down the stairs. He gets back up and warns Joseph that everything he'll see and hear will be lies. Lancaster then instructs Joseph to read the responses in the exorcism book while he leads. They both pray and see Pazuzu racing toward them. Lancaster prays loudly and shows the Holy Cross. Still, Pazuzu runs forward until a force suddenly pushes her back, and Sarah's body collapses. Lancaster approaches Sarah and sees her back to normal. She thanks him just before blood pools out from her head. She cries, and when she stops, Lancaster checks her pulse and prays for her soul. He then tells Joseph that Sarah is with God. Afterward, Lancaster and Joseph dig themselves out of the cave, only to find bodies around them. After some time, Lancaster meets with Semelier, but claims that he didn't find the relic. He bids the man goodbye and states that he should now be addressed as a priest.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.